Welcome to Sleepless in St. Canard, where nostalgia replaces run cycles. I'm Kitty.
And I'm Ange.
We haven't slept
in 30 years.
This is a podcast about the 90s Disney cartoon Darkwing Duck, where we get to talk about the building expectation of Negaduck rescuing people. The more surprising part of that is the Four's expectation of that even being a thing that might happen. So dry your eyes and lock all the memories of mini golf and Lilliput out of your mind, because today we're talking about Quackerjack doing the time of his life in Jailbird.
Yay! I like this episode. I like this episode a lot.
It is a breath of fresh air. I feel like it's been so long since we've had, I think, even any of the, I guess, I don't know. It's all a blur. I feel like the last of them that we did was the Bushroot one.
You might be correct. Or Megavolt. Megavolt's popped up in a bunch too. Actually, no, you're right. It might have been Bushroot.
Super swole Darkwing.
Yeah.
Episode. But I can't even say that Darkwing doesn't get super inflated in this one, but on the bright side, it is a Fearsome 5 episode, and it is a lot of fun. It's just really like complete 180 from where we were last week, and I desperately needed it. So thank you, Wheel of Names, for being merciful. And I actually did find a list of the production order of the episodes, and getting antsy was in like the first 10 episodes that were done.
Oh.
So that explains the wonkiness of the animation, the characters, and all that stuff. It was in like the, what's it called, like the Disney Channel preview, like the first chunk of episodes.
Yeah.
So yes, this, on the other hand, was not. So it looks pretty nice.
This is also, I think, because the Fearsome Five don't appear very often, aside from Justice Ducks and Darkwing Doubloon. I think this is the only other Fearsome Five episode in the entire series.
Oh yeah?
I'm pretty sure.
Shame. Life, the Negaverse, and everything.
I guess that counts, even though they're not really there for most of it.
Well, I mean, parts of them are.
Yes.
Arms and legs and eyeballs. No, wait, hold on. That's a different one. But yeah, so today is Jailbird Day. Hallelujah. We are here talking about it, and this is an episode that you should watch, because it is delightful. If you're watching on Disney Plus, it is Season 1, Episode 62. Negaduck swipes a rare diamond that has immense power.
It's true.
It is true. And it makes me wonder, I don't remember a lot of things, but I feel like I don't remember any Negaduck episodes where the description didn't really kind of match what was happening in it. So I feel like possibly whoever wrote all these descriptions actually did watch the Negaduck episodes, as opposed to skimming them and taking guesses at character names and all that stuff. So hats off to you, friend. The episode opens with a serious voice telling us all the fabled lore of this giant green emerald with eyes all over it, called the Mystic Eye of Quetzalcoatl, and it's Frank Welker again, sounding very much like Nibbler from Futurama. He talks about how it has the power to steal the strength of every living being that whatever. It's very mysterious. He's very serious, but then it just completely deteriorates into an ad for a museum with this crazy clown who I've heard you mention this clown before, and I thought that you had made him up, and I kind of wish that you had. He's creepy. I don't like him. His name was Winky the Clown.
And, you thought I made him up.
I did. I mean, it was in passing. He was mentioned. I'm like, haha, that's a silly name. And then I was like, oh no, he's real. He's here. And he's got his terrible little sing-songy voice. I also don't like clowns, so I'm biased. But he's apparently at the museum. Like, is it his museum?
He made a guest appearance, according to Launchpad.
Oh, yes, because Launchpad is very impressed. But he says that if you come down to see the Mystic Eye, that you get a free cat polisher. And it's just this giant machine that he shoves a cat into. We don't get to see what happens because we pan away to Darkwing and Launchpad watching the TV. But as Ange said, Launchpad is very impressed that Winky is making an appearance for it. And surprisingly, Darkwing agrees. That's why he'll be guarding it. And that Launchpad can keep Winky company. Please don't. Please don't. I'm happy to report that that is the only bit of Winky that we see in this episode. And then to start our theme off of this episode of Darkwing's take on everything, he proclaims that he can handle it alone and immediately gets crushed while he's on the wreck. It's just like every time, basically anytime he says he can handle it alone, he just gets annihilated is the running theme of this episode. I don't really know why he gets squished, but he gets squished basically every single time. But yeah, so that's just proving to us, the viewer, that he can not handle a single thing at any given time, let alone by himself. Darkwing gets to the museum where a guard is sleeping, because of course he is, and Darkwing is sneaking around, but just flat out breaks a whole bunch of stuff and wakes the guard up. It's like he could have just walked past the sleeping guard, but he's got to be Darkwing about things. So the guard wakes up, and he's like, "Oh, what are you doing here?" And Darkwing's like, "Oh, don't worry about it. I can handle this by myself." And this played out so well. But he's basically talking about how great he is. But he's not just talking about how great he is. He's literally talking to us, like to the camera. And over his shoulder, there's a window, and literally the entire Fearsome Five climb through the window directly behind him as he's talking about how great he is. It's so funny. It's spectacular. They all give him a stink eye as they come through the window. They all just kind of glare at him and walk along. It's perfect. It is such a funny gag. Of course, because they're already in, they just head right toward the Emerald, and Darkwing doesn't even realize it. He's still talking himself up, being his own personal hype man. And they're posing like they're some kind of statue, I guess, so that he doesn't notice them. But as he walks by, he just does like a little, "Oh, hey guys, how you doing?" And then he's like, "Wait a second," and doubles back and notices them.
Nothing can possibly get by me. I'm the king of crime busting, the Duke of Detection. Nothing escapes my eagle eye, not even the most minuscule... Hey, how you doing, guys? Not even the most minuscule Guys! The Fearsome Five!
Well, what do you know? It can count.
Unhand that priceless gem, you yellow-jacketed yahoo!
Megavolt, Bushroot, cash this do-gooder's check.
Oh, Negaduck. Oh, I missed him.
Oh, yeah.
He's pretty prime Negaduck in this episode, too.
He is I would say this is very core Negaduck. I don't even know how to describe that. It's just very much, it hits all of, because, every episode, sometimes the characters are a little imbalanced in their writing, and this one is just, it's how I picture Negaduck all the time, like his general character.
Yeah, he's great. And he's also pretty silly at parts.
Yes.
You get to see that he's just as accident prone as Darkwing is, which is always funny. So Darkwing literally leaps into frame, start yelling at Negaduck, who then... Well, Negaduck at this point, he already has the emerald, because of course he does. And Negaduck kind of fixes the Fearsome Five on Darkwing, but does it in a way so it's like, okay, so... If you haven't watched an episode of the show already, you know that Negaduck's named Negaduck. He sends Megavolt and Bushroot on him. So it's like you get little introductions to everybody. Megavolt tries to zap him, but the electricity backfires, shoots back at him because Darkwing ducks, and it hits Darkwing ducks. And it hits a shield, and he goes flying through the museum. And Bushroot makes a vine come out of the ground, and Darkwing whips out some pruning shears and chases it off, and then cuts Bushroot's ass off, basically. He cuts his tail feathers off. And I had paused it at this point, and Bushroot, it's the frame that I paused on. Bushroot looks horrified, as he should. Negaduck looks worried, and Quackerjack is in the background smiling.
Standard.
And Liquidator, he kind of floated through the window when the rest of them came in, and then he's just kind of been in the same pose through the whole window, like through the whole episode so far. He's just kind of like standing in a menacing T pose. He hasn't moved yet. He gets there. He boots up eventually. Liquidator EXE has stopped responding. But yeah, so Bushroot runs from his ass into a gong, and then Liquidator is booted up, and he's up next. I guess I was gonna say I don't think we've seen any Liquidator yet, but he was definitely in Life the Negaverse and everything, so I'm not gonna say that because it would be a lie. I love the Liquidator, I really do. He's such a clever villain, and I love all his wordplay, and his voice is great, beautiful.
He is a terrifying villain. Like, it's a good thing it's a cartoon universe. But any other universe that had this kind of character in it, a being made of water that could just, I don't know, crawl into your mouth at any point in time, horrifying.
Mm-hmm. And spoiler alerts, this emerald does wind up stealing all of the five's, or I guess the four's powers. And the Liquidator is still just water.
Mm-hmm.
So he's very powerful creature, I suppose. It's interesting. Yes, we get to have a little bit of a Liquidator moment here as he tells Darkwing that he has won an all expenses paid trip to Oblivion, as he kind of bow and arrows himself at Darkwing, and Darkwing traps him in a bottle with a little ship in it. And Negaduck is pissed. And Negaduck doesn't fight. He just is mad. He's like, I can't stand to see these losers waste their powers. And he just walks out and climbs back out the window.
He's just like, no, I'm out of here. Like,
it's just like, fuck this shit, I'm out.
yeah, I was just thinking of that song.
Negaduck's like, well, I got this emerald later, losers. And that just leaves Quackerjack. And Quackerjack is always down to clown. And shoots a slinky spring thing at Darkwing, and then he shoots it back at Quackerjack, who ends up in a sarcophagus. Quackerjack was on top of this moose thing, and when the sarcophagus opens back up, he's and the moose are both inside it. But when he opens it, Quackerjack says, "Mummy." I was like, I see what you did there.
Darkwing really handed them their ass. Which is
he truly did.
Which is funny because he needed the Justice Ducks in their debut to fight them all. Like, that was the entire story. He couldn't handle them on his own, and now he's just like, nah, I got this. I'm just gonna take care of all of them completely effortlessly.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know. One thing that Darkwing does all the time, and I'm sure I've mentioned it before, but I love it every single time. His little yep. The greatest. I love it. It's one of my favorite Darkwing things that he does. So he does that now. He's very pleased with himself, and he starts talking shit to Negaduck about how great he is, and that he'd never be able to steal the jewel, and then realizes that Negaduck isn't even there, and neither is the emerald. So good old Darkwing. That's that scene there. And then we go back to Darkwing Tower, where Darkwing and Launchpad are talking about the supervillain prison the Four have been sent to. And Darkwing's plan is that he is going to get arrested, sent to the prison, so that he can ask the Four where Negaduck is, basically.
Brilliant, Darkwing.
So that he just wants to buddy up with them and figure out where Negs is, and it's just going in that it's gonna be so bad, and you'd be right. The Launchpad is like, well, you can't get arrested, you're not a villain, and then Darkwing dons his first of many ill-conceived villain personas as Jumping Quack Flash leaps into screen, and he's just got springs on his feet and a little bow tie and a helmet, and Launchpad's like, hey, you want some help? And Darkwing says, nope, and then he crashes into the ceiling because, as we mentioned, that's comedy.
Doesn't he say you'll only cramp my style, despite the fact that he's dressed like an idiot?
I believe you're right. He really does look very dumb. He does. I feel like even dumber than he did in Let's Get Respectable.
They're kind of tied. They're both
Okay.
I feel like it's intentionally, like, just bad. Apparently Darkwing just should not be allowed to design anything.
Unless it's his own Darkwing costume, because that's pretty sweet.
Mm-hmm.
But I digress. Meanwhile, at the supervillain prison, Megavolt has been turned into a scarecrow. Apparently, that is his job.
He looks like he's been crucified.
They're taking this really seriously, and for his like high stakes, so the supervillain prison 2, just to back up a second, is basically on a giant mountain that's like a toothpick mountain. It's just huge, tall and skinny, and then there's this prison on top of it. And for as much as it's like a high security thing, I feel like we've only seen like 3 or 4 guards through the whole episode. It's mostly just the 4 goofing around doing what they want to do, but being cranky about it with one exception. But yeah, so apparently Megavolt is on scarecrow duty and has to zap any crows that try to eat from their little garden. Bushroot is watering some plants as Quackerjack is just laughing his ass off screen. And Liquidators pours out of Bushroot's watering can to say that surely Negaduck will bust them out, as if any of them have ever met Negaduck and would expect that to be a thing that's on his radar.
Say, why so tense? Negaduck will get us out. With Negaduck, relief comes fast, fast, fast.
Quackerjack's giving me the creeps. Somebody's got to tell him prison's not supposed to be fun.
Hey, guards! I'm almost out of weeds! Almost out of weeds! Party down!
Look at him. He's nuts. He's out of his tree, completely insane. Isn't he, my little bubbly wobbly?
Yes, let the cleansing power of prison life wipe away your cares. And your sanity.
Just having the best time. He really, like, up until a point in this episode, he's just blissed out. Like, this dude is having the best day of his life. And
I'm happy for him. I'm very happy for him.
He's doing pretty good. Megavolt talks about how crazy Quackerjack is, and then starts baby talking to his light bulb, which is the best. And then he kisses it, and then yeah, Negaduck's ears must have been ringing because he's in his own hideout, talking about how he's going to let the 4 rot in prison because he has the emerald and they're stupid and he could sell it for millions. He starts talking about how if he had powers, the city would be his in 5 minutes. And I mean, he's not wrong.
He's not.
And then the world's most suicidal dove flies in the window and lands on the emerald. It's just like, oh no, here we go. And Negaduck is just perfect Negaduck.
Those idiots! What a waste of superpowers. If I had their powers, this city would be mine in 5 minutes flat. Oh, how sweet. A beautiful dove, the symbol of peace. Perhaps I should feed it to a cat. Watch it, you fugitive from a fiddle factory. This thing is worth a fortune.
As he produces a random cat from under his table. Like, I just want to imagine that there's like a whole bunch of things under that table that's like in case of dove, and it's just a cat.
The opposite of dead dove, do not eat.
Yes. A live dove, feed to cat. Well, I don't know what I expected. So the cat chases the dove, and the cat knocks over the emerald, and Negaduck catches it before it hits the ground, and is polishing it with his cape as he threatens the cat. Watch it, you fugitive from a fiddle factory. This thing is worth a fortune. A beam of light comes out of the gem and hits the dove and the cat, disintegrating the dove?
Question mark.
And giving the cat wings and a giant belly. and it flies away. And Negaduck finally got his idea of the episode and decides to pay his buds a visit in jail after all. Very evil laugh.
Can we talk about for a second his hideout? Because it looks like a regular apartment building, but then on the inside, it's completely hollow.
Yeah.
And it's
just like beamwork.
I couldn't figure it out. I was like, is it a fake building? Like, did he build it as like a fake prop, or is it just a really empty, unfinished or abandoned apartment building? I don't know. I don't know why I focused on that so much, but I did.
You're trying to pinpoint his address. Send him some more cats. Yeah, I don't know. It was very weird because the opening scene of that too, it's like there's just these dark crisscrossing lines going on. I'm like, what is happening? Where is he? But I mean, it looks cool.
Mm-hmm.
I want to imagine that it's a really shoddy like apartment building that he commissioned just to bring down the property value of the neighbors.
He would.
Mm-hmm. So yes, Negaduck has finally decided to visit his friends, quote unquote, in prison because he's lonely. Meanwhile, Roller Duck, who is actually Darkwing's newest attempt at being a villain, is trying to get arrested, but he's just mostly nearly killing himself. And then his next persona that he sticks with for the remainder of his subterfuge is Demolition Duck. And he's got a pink mohawk and a leather jacket with some serious shoulder pads.
Kind of Dark Warrior built.
Yep. Yes, he does. So and he's like, oh, I should get arrested just for dressing like this. His idea is to, like, we don't really know what his idea is. I have to imagine that Darkwing isn't really going to, like, rob a place. He's probably just like, oh, I'm gonna go malinger or threaten or something. But anyway, he bursts into a convenience store that is already being robbed and smushes the crooks with the doors as he makes his dramatic entrance. And then, of course, everybody in the place declares him a hero, and the media is just packed to the gills outside, and they're fawning over him. And another guy is just like, oh, I'm glad there's another hero around to replace Darkwing Duck. This is perfect.
That is
how it should be. It's just like beautiful.
Maybe Darkwing from now on should just, I don't know, try to be a villain, and he'll accidentally be a hero every single time.
You see? There it is. So he's, he's not delighted because he's trying to get arrested, and he's crawling through the crowd to get away and crosses the street and finally gets busted for the worst crime of all, jaywalking. And Darkwing finally is very excited to get to go to the supervillain prison, but the stereotypical Irish cops are like, are you a supervillain? Yeah, check out this. And he makes little shadow puppets. And they're like, well, seems like you're a supervillain to me.
This checks out.
St. Canard's finest. Then we head back to the jail where the four are enjoying their pink slop, which is lunch. And Megabolt zaps it to try to make it taste better. Everyone hates jail except for Quacker Jack, who is once again having the time of his life. And then Demolition Duck gets dropped off at the jail. And it pans out exactly the way that it should, quite honestly. Because even when Darkwing was like, oh, this is going to be my plan, it's like, that he's going to walk up to them and just be like, hey, where Negaduck's hanging out? Which is essentially what happens. He's like, oh, I'll be able to get some answers by dropping hints in the conversation. And the four instantly hate him, which is great. And he's like, oh, how about this food, huh? And speaking of food, I bet you guys will be eating caviar when Negaduck sells that emeralds. Where's he hiding anyway?
Very smooth, very subtle.
Very smooth, very smooth. Megavolt is immediately like, he looks familiar. And the others are like, oh, he's got such an ego and he's so arrogant. And Quacker Chuck says he's so squingly.
And he shields his face in disgust.
Like his squingliness. I don't know what that means. Is that a word? I'm gonna Google it right now.
I think he
Squingly.
made it up.
Is that a word? I'm gonna Google it right now.
I think he
Squingly.
made it up.
I think he did too.
Although in modern day Tumblr speak, I think of Grimblow, Blimbro, or like Blurbo.
Going.
Blurbo. Blurbo from my shows. Or-
Okay, so squingly is on Urban Dictionary. Oh, you know that's true. It says feeling anxious, uncomfortable, and gross all at the same time.
I'll take it.
Yeah, so there we go. Everybody's like, oh, he must be Darkwing Duck. He's the squingliest of all. And they immediately decide to kill him. And Megavolt's like, I'm gonna zap him. Butcher's like, mulch him. Eater says, slice him and dice him. And then Quackjack always has to go there. And he says, tickle him to death.
I thought he said pickle him to death, and I didn't question it either way.
That wouldn't be a big deal.
Oh, sad trombone.
My work here is done. Darkwing tries to throw him off his trail with shadow puppets. They aren't buying it. And they start kicking the snot out of him.
Wait a second! This can't be Darkwing Duck. If it was Darkwing Duck, he would have called me mean names like Bushbrain and Melonhead.
I think Bushbrain is right.
Yeah, good thinking, Melonhead.
Yeah, it takes one to know one.
I have insinuated myself into their confidence. All that remains is to find a doctor.
Bushroot surprisingly calls them off that he can't be Darkwing because he hasn't been calling him mean names like Bushbrain or Melonhead. And in perfect brain cell unison, both Megavolt is like, I think Bushbrain is right, and then Quackerjack says, yeah, good thinking, Melonhead. They could not resist. And Darkwing congratulates himself before he passes out because he just got his ass handed to him. Negaduck, meanwhile, has gotten back to the island, ready to break into this fortress of a prison, while speaking in third person. Full time. He shoots a rocket-powered harpoon at the cliff face and proclaims, Negaduck crushes all, just as a rock that got loose from the harpoon comes crashing down on top of him. And he says, or vice versa.
That is a very good example of when I say that people tend to lean a little too far into him being edgy and evil and angry all the time. But
Incompetent.
He can be incompetent, and he can be silly, and he can make jokes at his own expense.
Yeah, so there we go. He's squished, and he's like squished flat to the rock too. Classic. And then we check in with the gang again, and they're breaking rocks because that's the thing that happens in prison. And he's zapping his rocks, and they're exploding. Crackerjack is hitting his with like a honking hammer. And then Liquidator's got his water, of course, and I think Sure just has a regular little hammer thing. Darkwing tries to start up the Negaduck, questioning again, and he's got a ball and chain around his ankle, and Liquidator whacks the ball like a croquet ball and sends him crashing into a boulder. And then Negaduck is faring about the same. He's at it again, but he's got a giant Negaduck colored hot air balloon with a giant red hat on it.
He's as subtle as Darkwing.
He really is. It's just so like, where did this hat come from? Did he make it?
I assume so. That's what I'm going with. This is what he does in his spare
He
time.
had to. He's just like, you know what that balloon is missing? Big ass hat. So he's flying around in his giant balloon, and so yeah, he's floating around, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna get into this prison in no time." Then Megavolt says that if he doesn't do something destructive soon, he'll go nuts, as if he hasn't just been blowing up rocks. But he notices the balloon, which I guess he doesn't realize he's wearing a giant Negaduck hat, and zaps it and pops it, and Negaduck goes spiraling out of control. But luckily for him, he lands, still crashes, I guess, through the warden's roof, and Warden Waddleworth's desk. Negaduck menaces him and tells him that things are going to change around here. Because no one in this entire episode is observant. We go back to the boys.
The boys.
Out at the rocks. And Darkwing is now inside of a fake rock, sneaking up on them. But he can hopefully overhear something about Negaduck's plan. But he says that he could get the inside dope on Negaduck. I don't know what that means, but surprisingly, it works because somehow Liquidator knows that Negaduck is there now. Maybe because he saw a giant Negaduck hatted balloon floating overhead.
Well, Megavolt comes over to him and says, he's like, "Psst, word from Negaduck."
Right. I had it mixed up. But yeah, Megavolt tells Liquidator that Negaduck is breaking them out tonight. Essentially, that means that Darkwing's plan worked. Be inside a fake rock. I mean, he could have just stood there like as Demolition Duck for another 5 seconds, but he had a fake rock and he had to use it.
Do you know why I sent you that YouTube video of the beer?
No.
Really? I thought you do. So I just sent you a YouTube video and you had no idea?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I just was like, I don't understand. I don't know what did she mean to send it to me?
Because when Megavolt tells Liquidator puts his arm around him and he says, "Here's to good friends. Tonight is kinda special." And I was trying to figure out what that was a reference to, and it's that beer commercial I sent you.
Oh.
It was like an iconic beer commercial in the 70s where it would always start off with the music. "Here's to good friends. Tonight is kinda special."
Oh, look at that. No, I did not make that connection at all.
So you just
say...
You just smiled and nodded. You didn't even say anything.
Well, to be fair, you were just talking about how you were confused because Nem and I basically have the same avatar now. I was like, maybe she meant to send this to Nem. I'm not going to say anything. I just watched it and I was like, okay. So I guess you could say that beer commercial was a Negaduck hatted hot air balloon in my life.
It certainly was.
Flying overhead.
Beer commercial references in Darkwing Duck. Why not?
There you go. Hey, Negaduck throws him back with the boys. So anyway, Negaduck's breaking them out tonight. Huzzah. Darkwing decides he has to go tell the warden, tries to run off, but the ball and chain around his leg stops him, and then of course he uses the ball to throw himself into the warden's office. So many holes in this guy's office. There's, of course, just the spinning chair is facing the wall. So Darkwing thinks he's talking to the warden and tells him about the inevitable danger of Negaduck and all that jazz. And then, of course, oh no! He spins around and it's Negaduck. And he says, beep, 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 newsflash. It's already too late. As Negaduck just flat out points a bazooka at him. Apparently they make very quick work of everyone in the prison because all the guards are tied up. Megavolt says, "I kept telling them you'd come for us." And Negaduck said, "I did come, but you're not going anywhere." And then he uses the gem on them, stealing their powers. Oh no, who could have seen this betrayal coming?
They just
and then he
shrink down to tiny size.
Yeah, I guess maybe because the dove was already small, that's why it vanished into oblivion. Because the four just get tiny. Negaduck gets proper kaiju sized and becomes like a weird Voltron version of all of them. He's got Quackerjack's hat and like neck ruff, Shroot's arms, Megavolt's chest, and the Liquidator's wishy-washy non-leg things.
Rip.
Yeah. A literal rip. He summons Vines to tie up Darkwing, but is distracted by squeaky-voiced Megavolt, who tries to zap him, but has no powers. And then they all like, oh, none of us have powers. Although, as we stated earlier, Liquidator is still a water pup. So, I don't know.
I think the only reason that happened is because the animators probably didn't have model sheets for the original pre-transformations of Bushroot and Liquidator. and it probably would have been a huge pain in the ass to have to drag them in and redesign them to have them all as non-powered. So they were probably like, let's just shrink them down. It's like nothing at all to do that. So
Yeah, just make them small. And it's just, so there's this grand thing going on, and then all of a sudden Quackerjack is just on Mega Negaduck's arm and chewing on him, just like biting him. And Negaduck calls him out. He's like, you never even had powers.
I'm ruined!
What are you whining about? You never had any powers to begin with.
You stole my wackiness!
I did not. Okay. Maybe I did.
I love the way he says it too. Like, maybe I did.
Yeah. Like, all right, I guess this is what we do now. Darkwing shoots a gas pellet at him, and they get swatted back, making Darkwing swallow it, and he starts inflating, because of course he does. Until he, gets grabbed and gets deflated again and squishes him. And then Negaduck just busts out of the prison wall, making his way to St. Canard, and kind of does it like Red Sea style, parts it. And Liquidator's like, oh, why didn't I ever think of that? Like, no time for that. Let's keep going. And then the four decide that they need Darkwing's help to get their powers back. Because they, at least, are not too proud to ask for help, Darkwing. But Megavolt sidles up to him, and he's like, Darkwing, old pal, old enemy. And, of course, Darkwing says he could do it by himself. And then collapses, but finally admits that he might need a little help. Which is lucky, because they're all very small. Negaduck is having a grand old time wrecking the city and decides to start a flood via the sewers because, of course, he does. And then he's like, oh, this isn't terrible enough. Let's make it boiling water.
Not bad, but a genius of my caliber ought to be able to cook up something better. Cook? Ooh, I like that. I'll just add a little juice. I've always wanted to try out my recipe for St. Canard stew. I hate that.
Giggles again. But his giggle is literally Quackerjack's laugh.
It's horrifying.
Darkwing is paddling along as the four sit around drinking weak tea. Quackerjack is so very sad. He's very sad. And Bushroot realizes that if he has all their powers, that he has all their weaknesses too. And who knows their weaknesses better than them? And then Darkwing says, gentlemen, let's get cooperative.
Football huddle.
But they're so small, he just kind of like drapes his cape over them. Kind of adorable. And then they start Operation Achilles' Heel. Darkwing gets Negaduck's attention, and of course, he's trying to kill him and zap him. But Darkwing makes him zap his water legs, and somehow then gets on his head, makes him chase him, throwing cement on him, making his water legs harden. And then the four just kind of like stand around and taunt him. And then Negaduck starts crying.
Ungrateful brats.
I know, he's crying. And then he topples over, and the gem falls out. Darkwing gets it, and it immediately breaks. And then the four get their powers back. And then, oh, now that we have learned to work together, why don't we team up against Darkwing? And Darkwing is like, well, this time I took the precaution of calling in backup, and Goslin and Launchpad show up in the Thunder Quack and drop a net on them. And the nets shouldn't work on the Liquidator, but they always do, so it's fine.
And Negaduck apparently just vanished out of existence like the dove.
It's the many deaths of Negaduck is the alternate title of this show. Darkwing says, like I always say, everyone needs a little help sometimes.
Lies.
We get our credits. It is absolute lies. But yeah, so that was Jailbird. It was a lot of fun.
What do you think about Quackerjack teaming up with Winky the Clown?
It'd probably be very happy. I don't know if Quacker Jack would be as happy as he was in jail. Very high bar. But I feel like, I don't know. I feel like Winky was in it for like 5 seconds and I don't really want to think about him. But he's probably I have to imagine that he created the cat polisher. So he'd probably keep making things like that and then Quacker Jack would use them for evil purposes.
Okay, follow-up question. What about Winky the Clown teaming up with Lilliput?
Well, that would be a perfect way for the two of them to get strapped into a rocket and shot into the sun. It'd be very efficient. Had a Lilliputness to him, too.
He did. That's why I was asking. Well, that and because you seem to hate both. And I had to push the question just a little bit further.
Ask the hard-hitting questions on this podcast. That's what we do. So what are your thoughts here?
I love this episode. I think it's just very funny overall. Like we said before, Negaduck is just peak Negaduck. He's the combination of, he's clearly competent in the fact that he knew what to do with their powers and he could, in fact, use them better than they could. But he is also still kind of an idiot, as we saw at the same time. And apparently also cries when they taunt him.
Can't hang. I guess he could dish it out, but he can't take it.
Yeah, it's just, I like the episode. I think in terms of also, I think what jumped out to me when I watched this many times in the past, the Fearsome Four's overall dynamic is they feel like they're friends in a way. Like they're at the same time, like they're teasing each other and everything, but there's like a playfulness in it. And it just feels like they're very established by this point. Because in Justice Ducks, they were more fighting over stuff. And it just feels like they're very natural as a group. Almost dare I say like some kind of weird family dynamic. Like, I don't know. I like that. I really like that about it. I thought it was funny that the supervillain prison has absolutely no other villains in it, but I guess it's brand new. They did say it had just opened, so maybe they just haven't had a chance to fill it up yet. The supervillain prison does come back in the Joe comics, which we haven't covered that, but it does make a return. There's an entire arc that takes place within the max security prison. But I like that. Darkwing, like you pointed it out already, like all the perfection of just the fact that he wanted to do it all himself. He kept getting smushed. And then when he tried to get arrested, it hilariously, he ended up actually getting what he wants normally, which is to be recognized and loved. And it's just wrong time, wrong place, which is just too perfect. So, yeah, for me, this is a 5 out of 5 episode.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's like, this is the quintessential Darkwing humor.
Mm-hmm.
It's great. And I felt like everybody had like their moment. Like even like we got to see, I feel like, a lot more of the Four than we did of Negaduck. But the scenes that Negaduck was in, he just completely stole because, of course, that's who he is.
Mm-hmm.
But it was fun. And I agree. I feel like the Four are very fun. Like they're great together because they're still kind of like a little snotty with each other, but you could tell that they like to hang out. Like they're a team. They're a team that somehow thinks that Negaduck is going to break them out of jail, but they don't mind being around each other, except for when Quacker Jack is super happy about being in jail. They're a little weirded out by that. As you know what? That's fine. Whatever. Some of you make brides out of potatoes. Some of you kiss light bulbs. And the other one's
got lobster women. Lobster women.
That's right, lobster women. So, don't yuck his yum. That's my official stance. But yeah, 5 out of 5. Even though there was not a single Muddlefoot in sight. But you know what? It was delightful. Goslin was in it for 5 seconds. She didn't say anything. She just made that appearance at the end, which is surprising too, but I don't know.
There was a lot going on, and I think it was paced appropriately. I think a lot of that came down to if they had put Launchpad and Goslin in on top of everything, I guess it would have been a bit too much because Darkwing needs to team up with the Fearsome Four, and he might be less likely to do that. And also, Goslin is not going to follow him into prison, probably. So.
I don't know. I feel like she could probably get arrested in 5 seconds.
That's true.
Like if this had been a Quiverwing Quack Darkwing episode, That would have been fun. But that's fine. That would have just been the icing on an already delicious cake.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there we go. Look at that. A beautiful, beautiful palate cleanser. And we only have 2 episodes left on our wheel. Somehow, we've made it this far. And Ange and I were talking, and we think we might come up with new categories to kind of chip away at the backlog that's still there. I mean, there are 91 episodes. But we think that it would be fun if you, our beautiful listeners, would request some episodes. So if there's one that you think would particularly piss us off or make us very happy, or if you just, I don't know, want to hear me rant about Jambalaya Jake, you can drop us a line, send us an email, message us on Twitter. All of that jazz should be in the notes, but I always forget our email address. What's our email address, Anne?
Sleepless.stcanard, that is stcanard, @gmail.com.
Oh, and we are at Canard Pod on Twitter. And then I'm assuming Sleepless at St. Canard on Facebook.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
There we go. So yeah, let us know if you think of any episodes that you want us to watch, if you want to drop us a letter or, $5,000. Any of those places are appropriate. And so we will be repopulating this wheel right now. Well, not right now, in the upcoming weeks. We got a 50-50 shot here, Ange.
Oh boy.
We've got Bearskin Thug. We've got Twin Beaks. What are you feeling?
I think it's going to be Bearskin Thug.
All right. Let's see if Ange's gift of prophecy pays off. Oh, and you've done it again, my friend.
Ooh.
Next week, we'll be watching Bearskin Thug.
Is that the episode you constantly forget what it's about?
I've already forgotten what it's about. There's camping involved.
There is camping involved.
Yes.
It's a Steelbeak. It's a Steelbeak episode.
Okay, and there's Muddlefoots.
Yes. Wait, no.
No?
No, you might be thinking of
I always think of the other one.
The potato one. Night of the Living Spud. They go camping in that one.
They go camping like Goofy movie style. Those Muddlefoots.
Yes, this one is more father-daughter camping.
Oh, nice. Okay. So Bearskin Thug will be our next episode, and then, the wheel is now just 100% Twin Beaks. So that'll be our order coming up. And then we'll probably do an episode about the new comic, because we'll probably be right around there time-wise. And then we'll break down our next selections, but please send us your suggestions, because we would love to know what you want to subject us to. So that is all, I think, for today. Do you have anything else to share with the peoples?
No, I think that is it.
Okay, excellent. So we will be Bearskin Thugging it next time, and until then, remember that Winky the Clown doesn't sleep, and neither do we.
Boy.
Boy.